going to tell you a story, and it's going to involve a video game, and how that one video game can bring people together and complicate their lives. Oh, and maybe a hint of recursion. Welcome to All Your Lives Belong to Us. Episode 1. Nick.
257.
A. Lemon cuddled up to Nick as she kissed him and ran her fingers through his beard. The warm morning sun complemented the freezing sand underneath both of them. Nick kissed her back on the forehead. His own head was pounding. It felt like he must have drank all the alcohol in the city last night, which had been their plan at the start of the evening. It was only now, in the pain of the biggest hangover in recorded history on the planet, did the obvious fallacy of the idea strike him. The sun inched over his face and burned his eyes. He winced and held his head up to block out the glowing ball of reoccurring extraterrestrial explosion in the sky. The new and only tattoo on his wrist revealing itself. Half a video game controller stared back at him. There was a thin layer of saran wrap on top of it. The skin under was loudly protesting the existence of the tattoo. "I got a tattoo last night?" Nick mumbled to himself. Lemon laughed, and without moving her head, she held her arm up to connect with him. "I think we both did." "A couple's tattoo? That doesn't seem like us." "I've now branded you for life, making you my property," Lemon joked, still not moving. She was obviously feeling the effects of the alcohol too. "You're mine, until forever, or until I cut off your arm, whichever comes first." "Well, it's good to know the out of this relationship isn't too severe." Nick laughed as he kissed her again. "How you doing?" "It feels like a pig pooped in my brain." "Well, that's graphic, but accurate," Nick said as his brain complained about the loud mixture of sun and hangover. "I love you, you know." "Oh, really? Happy anniversary, by the way." "Same to you. I love you." "Took you long enough," Lemon said as she cuddled up next to him. "I think my underwear's missing." "Don't look at me. I don't have it on. Though I do have vague memories of us skinny dipping in the river." "That does sound like us." "They're probably on their way down the river, traumatizing some poor teenage boy." They both laughed. As the two of them laid there motionless, the heat of the sun was comforting. "But really," Nick started, as he squeezed her tight, "I love you." Lemon ran her fingers through his beard. He loved when she did that. It made him feel so connected to her, like she was petting a cat or something. Come to think of it, between the beard stroking and the warm sun lazing, maybe he was turning into a cat. And that would be okay. Cats had a pretty good life. "I'm going to tell you a story," Lemon said, in her best old man voice. Don't get me started on that stupid Aurora Wasteland podcast you listen to. "And it's going to involve a man and a woman," Lemon continued. "And the lengths two people will go to stay together forever," she said as she tapped their tattoos together. "Stop it," Nick said as he winced at the pain from the connection. "Oh, and maybe a hint of tattooing, video games, lots of panties, and, interdimensional travel." "Seriously, that guy annoys the shit out of me. Plus, his speaking pattern is annoying." Lemon leaned over and kissed him. They both smiled at each other. Then, at the same time, they said, Welcome to the Aurora Wasteland. Lemon laughed. Nick rolled his eyes. "I love you," she repeated. "I love you too," he replied, as he pulled her on top of him, then lifted her head to kiss her. I have cancer," Lemon blurted out as she interrupted him. "What?" Nick said, confused, his brain unable to make the quick transition in thought. "What do you mean?" "It's a pretty self-explaining sentence." "Yeah, well, explain it to me." "I have breast cancer. It spread. My doctor gave me about a year to live or less. That was 6 months ago." "6 months ago?" Nick blurted out. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have done things, found other doctors, I did all that," Lemon said as she leaned down to kiss him. "Nothing changed. I saw a few doctors. They gave me the same diagnosis. Terminal within a year. And spending the time I had left with you was all I really cared about." "Still, you should have told me." "Why?" Nick shrugged. He didn't have a good answer for her. Most of the thoughts he had were in the selfish direction. "Would it have changed anything?" Lemon asked. "No. You shouldn't have to go through that alone." "I didn't. I had you. You kept me happy, without even knowing about it." "You're welcome," Nick said, unsure if that should be his reply. "Plus, it's given me a new focus at work, a drive, a determination I never had before." "But you don't have to work. You can just enjoy your time." "I enjoy my work. And without kids, the game is my only legacy." Nick leaned up and kissed her again. "I could be your legacy." Lemon shrugged and rolled off Nick. The full force of the sun hit him hard as she did. "I just need to finish," Lemon said, as she got to her feet, dusted off the sand from her dress. She stared down at him, then extended a hand. "I wish I was enough." Nick, it's not about you. Don't make it about you. I wish I never told you." Nick grabbed her hand. and pulled her back down to him. I'm sorry, this is overwhelming, and I'm still processing it. You do whatever makes you happy, and I'll be here for you. Lemon smiled and kissed him. I love you more than Master Chief loves crushing the Flood's balls. Nick ran his hand through her hair and pulled her back for another kiss. Gross. Want to get married? Lemon asked, her dark brown eyes wide at the thought. Thought you'd never ask, Nick said as he jumped to his feet, grabbed Lemon and threw her over his shoulder. She burst out laughing. What are you doing? We're getting married. Now? I didn't mean now. Side note, your butt looks great from here. Thank you. It's my best angle. And yes, now.
257.
B. The crisp bed sheet stuck to Nick's face as he lifted his head. A thick, ropey strand of drool connected him to it like an umbilical connection. He swatted it away. As he sat up and swung his legs over the side of the bed, the drool dripped to his hand and down onto the blue shag carpet. It took a few seconds for his eyes to focus and his brain to clear. He was in a hotel room with no memory as to how he got there. Had he been drinking the night before? It would have taken an epic night of drinking to make him black out and forget how he got here. Where even was here? He patted his clothes looking for clues. He was wearing a black suit, white shirt, black tie, none of which he remembered owning. There was nothing in his pockets, not even a wallet or phone. Cautiously, he got to his feet, unsure if a hangover was waiting to strike. Surprisingly, it wasn't, though he did feel groggy, like he'd been asleep for too long. He rubbed his chin and noticed his beard was gone. It had taken him months to grow it, as Lemon liked to call it, badass sexy length. Why would he have shaved it off? His face felt smooth and strange, almost like it wasn't his. Panicked that it wasn't, he ran for the bathroom, hoping it had a mirror. It did, and his face was the face he remembered having, minus the beard, of course. He stared into his own eyes, looking for answers about how he'd gotten here. Nothing presented itself. He exhaled and splashed water on his face. The cold water was refreshing. He was hoping it would knock something free. It didn't, though he did notice his finger. A skull-faced, tattooed wedding ring stared back at him. When did he get married? Had it been last night? The tattoo did look a little fresh, but not that fresh. After patting his face dry on a hand towel, he returned to the bed to try to find his phone. It had to be here somewhere. Maybe it had fallen on the floor. Maybe under the bed. He searched and found nothing. The frame of the bed went all the way to the floor, removing any possibility that a phone could have fallen under it. He ripped the sheets off the bed in a frantic search. He was starting to panic. He could feel his breath increasing. Where was it? How did he get here? Where was his stuff? Across the room, he spotted the large hotel window. The curtains were closed, but he could still tell it had to be sometime at night. No sun was coming, trying to inch around the corners. Only a dull blue glow. It had to be the neon sign of the building. He stumbled through the blankets and sheets on the floor towards the window, nearly tripping and falling into the TV unit, which he noticed had 2 TVs on it. That was odd. Most hotels only had one. A game console he'd never seen before sat under one. A controller next to it. It reminded him of Lemon. He looked at the half-game controller tattoo on his arm. He smiled and slowed his approach to the window. The curtains were black and matched the wood color of the TV unit and the bed frame. Nick yanked them open, expecting to be blasted by the glow of blue letters or whatever cheap motel he was staying in. Only nothing about this motel room felt cheap. The bed, the bathroom, the 2 TVs, they all seemed high-end. The room itself seemed to be on the fancier side, and the paint or whatever it was that was coating the window seemed to be high-end too. Only small blue lights seeped through the areas where the paint wasn't as thick as others. Nick scratched at it. The paint was on the other side of the window. Nothing he could do from here. What kind of hotel painted the outside of the windows like that? He exhaled slowly and pressed his hand over his tattoo. He could feel a panic attack building. The air in the room felt like it was getting thinner. Cautiously, he stepped over the bed sheets towards what he assumed was the exit. But based on the window, he was unsure of what to expect. Only this time, his foot did tangle in the bedding, and he went tumbling forward towards the exit, past the bedroom and right into the small side table that stood next to the door. Its contents tumbled to the floor on him. Embarrassed, he struggled to his feet and picked everything up the best he could. There was a pamphlet for a computer company, a bus ticket someone had left behind, and a sticky note about the Aurora Wasteland website with the URL written on it, aurorawasteland.com. That was strange. He stared back at the sticky note as he remembered all those times Lemon had told him all about that stupid paranormal garbage. He placed the note back down on the table, slowly, unable to take his eyes off of it. Shouts from the hallway broke his trance, and he reached for the doorknob. Someone was yelling at someone else. Great, just great. But on the bright side, at least there were other people around. The hotel couldn't be off in the middle of nowhere. He turned the knob, and the smell of cleaning product rushed back at him from the hallway. It was almost overpowering, but he pushed through it and stepped into the overly bright hallway. The lights were almost blinding in their whiteness. Nick shielded his eyes as he moved down the hallway towards the yelling. "Get back in your room," a man yelled. "I'm done with this," another man yelled. "Last warning, get back in your room." "No, you can't." A flash of blue and the sound of a gunshot cut off the man. Nick watched as the shadow of a body dropped to the floor. The man's head landed at his feet. The entire side of his head was missing. A confused look and a half-handlebar mustache was burned into the remaining half of the man's face. Nick stared at him. What the fuck had he just witnessed? And what kind of weapon could do that? "Get back in your room," the man yelled again, only this time he was closer and obviously talking to Nick. "What?" Nick mumbled. "Listen, I don't know where I am or..." Another flash of blue. Another gunshot. Nick's lifeless body collapsed into a heap.
257. 257.
Hey. The video game character on the screen smiled back at Nick as he finished customizing it. Nick took a large gulp of his beer and glanced at his watch. Shit, he'd spent most of an hour updating his character. More importantly, he'd been playing Elysium, the video game currently staring back at him, for 18 hours. And most importantly, Lemon should have been home hours ago. But today was release day, the very game Nick had devoted his day to, and likely his permanent bladder damage to. Lemon had spent years developing Elysium. She'd started soon after they first met. She'd told him one night, after a lot of wine, that he inspired her, which he'd taken as manipulation to get him to go down on her. Which he'd obviously done. It was surreal for him to stare at this game, to finally be able to see what she'd spent so much time on. It was really the only thing she did other than spending time with him. The game was, as Lemon called it, a massive multiplayer game with balls. You create your own character, made them look like whatever you wanted. Obviously, Nick had created his character to look just like himself, except, more muscles and less beard. You spend most of the game exploring a city that has somehow slipped into another reality. 99% of the occupants of the town are mindless zombie-type creatures that are hunted by the 1% who didn't change. You play as one of the 99% who isn't actually brainless. You have to somehow save everyone while surviving the much more powerful 1%. The similarities to real life weren't lost on Nick. He knew Lemon's political opinions. Over time, you got to unlock new powers, character customization, and weapons. Plus, new areas of the city opened up for you. And most importantly, the story slowly revealed itself, which was by far Nick's favorite part. He loved that your character was fighting against the 1%. He loved finding out who exactly the 1% were, because they weren't who he thought they were. He loved it all. Every second of the game reminded him of Lemon, and he loved that. He loved it so much. The front door burst open and Lemon fell through it laughing. "You okay?" Nick laughed as he jumped to his feet. She laughed as she rolled around on the floor. "Nah, I'm fine. I'm a video game creator. I make worlds." She said it in her best, most important man voice. "I know you make worlds, but the doctor said drinking isn't a good idea for you." Lemon held a finger to her lips. "Nick, don't tell the doctor, please." Nick laughed. "You are drunk and I love it. But really, don't tell him." "Okay, I won't," Nick said as he pulled her to her feet. She kissed his cheek. "You wanna bang? I deserve it. I made a video game come out of me. And now it's in people's houses." The pause screen of Elysium on their TV caught her attention, and she kissed Nick again. "You're playing my game." Her voice a cute mix of drunk and excited. "I've been playing it all day. I kinda love it. I'm really proud of you." Lemon grabbed his face and kissed it. "Keep talking like that, and I'm going to put your D in my M." Lemon giggled at her own words. "Maybe A too." She burst out laughing. "Why don't you sit down and I'll get something to eat," Nick said as he moved towards the couch. "It's release day. I need some D, please," Lemon said with her best pouty face. Nick laughed and slowly placed Lemon down on the couch. "The release was okay?" "Not really. Super low numbers, which is why I needed so much wine to get me through the day." The Elysium pause screen stared back at her. "You make up a very big percentage of the people who bought the game today." "I'm sure they're..." "Spoilers, I made the game for you. You're the target audience." "You did?" "I know you said I inspired you, but I didn't know you made it just for me," Nick said as he sat down next to her. "Just you," Lemon said as she leaned in for a kiss. "No one else." Nick put a hand on her face and met her lips. "I love you." "Gross," Lemon replied, and then kissed him again. "Someone is definitely getting laid tonight," Nick said, between kisses. "And not just the boring old moves. I'm breaking out the good stuff. Mouth stuff." "Thank the video game gods," Lemon giggled, "because I made a whole video game for you. The least you could do was to take a trip to my..." Lemon closed her eyes and shook her head. "You okay?" Lemon trailed off as she collapsed onto Nick.
257. 257.
B. There was a dull flashing glow that penetrated the inside of Nick's eyes. He had the strangest dream. He was in a hotel room and he ran his hand over the coarse hotel bedsheets. ending his train of thought. He opened his eyes as he bolted upright in the hotel room bed and frantically checked his body for injuries from the gunshot he'd sustained in the hallway. Was it a gunshot? It looked like a gun. Kind of. But it didn't sound like a gunshot. After verifying there were no holes in him, he exhaled, not even aware he was holding his breath. The hotel room looked exactly as before, except one of the TVs was on. He still found it strange there were two of them. But he pushed that thought to the background as he got to his feet and inched closer to the TV. The left side of the screen had a picture of him on it. It was a picture he didn't remember taking. He glanced down at his clothes. They were the same ones he had on in the picture. In fact, they were the same ones he had on the last time he woke up in this hotel room. The same ones he was murdered in the hallway. He glanced at the door. The hallway was quiet at the moment. He wondered if anybody was out there again. He wondered if his body was still there from before. It felt like he died. The pain was real. He'd never felt anything like that in his life. Whatever he'd been shot with had killed him, he was sure of it. But here he was alive. How was that possible? The blue shimmer of the TV screen caught his attention again. On the opposite side of the screen was a list of statistics. Most were labeled with a count of 0. One notable one stood out to him. Deaths. Had a big fat 1 next to it. So he had died. But he came back to life somehow? He was pretty sure that was impossible. Only one man in the history of the world claimed to successfully have done that, and Nick wasn't a believer in him. Nick ran his fingers through his hair. It felt the same as before. He fell back into the bed and stared at the ceiling. Small blue dots spotted it. They almost looked like stars. The more he stared at them, the less random they seemed. He stared at them hoping some hidden message would pop out at him and explain exactly what was going on. Nothing came to him. Where the hell was he? Frustrated, Nick grabbed one of the pillows from the bed and threw it at the TV that was displaying his stats. The pillow bounced off it harmlessly and the TV was obviously bolted to the cabinet. To knock the only video game case off the console that was attached to the other TV. Nick grunted and leaned over the side of the bed to pick up the game case. His hands hovered over it. It couldn't be. There, staring up at him, was Lemon's game, Elysium. What was a copy of her game doing here? Seeing it made him question everything, most notably his sanity. He had to be dreaming. This couldn't be real. What was a copy of her game doing here? Out of all the games in the world, the odds of her game being here seemed extremely low, though it had become one of the world's most popular video games over time. Still, it couldn't have been here. His fingers wrapped around the case. It felt real. He lifted it up and examined it. Still seemed real. He flipped it over and read her name on the back of it. Tears welled up in his eyes. He pressed the game to his forehead. He wished she was here. Strange and weird was her domain, not his. His was simpler. He liked working somewhere with low expectations and effort. It was how he got into working at the hotel. She was the brains. He was, well, she was also the body, but he was the inspiration. She'd made the game he was holding just for him. He stared at it and remembered all those hours playing it. He remembered running around the city. He remembered upgrading his character. He remembered running from the people with the crazy guns. Fuck a duck in the ass, Nick blurted out. His brain made the connections it required. He was in the game. Her game. The game Lemon had made for him.
257. 257.
Hey. The warm sun complemented the freezing sand underneath Nick as he took a long, slow drink from the bottle of whiskey he had hidden in his backpack. The sun inched over his face and burned his eyes. He winced and held his hand up to block out the glowing ball of reoccurring extraterrestrial explosions in the sky. The new tattoo on his finger revealing itself, a wedding ring. His older half-video game controller tattoo stared back at him as well. He took another long drink, then pulled a small wooden box from his bag. Slowly he opened it. The morning wind rushed into the tiny, now open space, picking pieces of ash up as it moved through. Soon a cloud formed and the box was empty. Nick watched as the last pieces of lemon blew down the beach and out of his life. He took another drink and met the bottom of the bottle, to which he replied by throwing the bottle into the river. It bobbed on the surface and then followed Lemon's ashes downstream. He put the box down next to himself in the sand. He missed her so much. Every day was pain. He knew this was coming. He had time to process it, but it didn't make anything easier. None of it was easier. Death, by definition, is extremely fucking hard. He wished he could take another drink. He needed to not feel this. He watched the water move by. It looked cold. He wondered how long he could live if he just jumped in. Minutes? Seconds? Either would suffice as long as it did what he needed it to do. Nick staggered to his feet and approached the edge of the water. It moved past him fast. and looked like it got deep quickly. He closed his eyes and thought of Lemon, then took a step into the water. It was ice cold and went to his knee. He took another step, and this time it was almost to his waist. One more step was probably all he needed. From his pants pocket, his phone buzzed, and out of habit, he pulled it out to look at it. There was a new email from Lemon's company, Deep Oil Games. He opened it and laughed, then shivered, and quickly got himself out of the water. The sun, rising fast, felt so warm on his freezing legs. He stared at his phone and read more of the email. There was a new expansion out, Elysium, into the Aurora Wasteland. He laughed. The email detailed the game was releasing right now at the time this email came out, and that it was the last work of the award-winning and best-selling video game creator, Lemon. Nick smiled as tears filled his eyes. At the very bottom of the email was a message from Lemon. This expansion is for the true audience of Elysium. Hope you get as much out of it as I loved making it for you. Lemon. P.S. Welcome to the Aurora Wasteland. Nick laughed again. God, he hated that podcast.
257.
Hey, my name is VaughnAshby, and I'm a writer. I wrote this. Thanks for listening. Make sure you stick around to continue the story. If you liked it, why not pick up one of my free books? Head on over to VaughnAshby.com/free and get a few of my novels. Go explore the Aurora Wasteland yourself at AuroraWasteland.com because it's real.